in the far edge of the galaxy stood a building most people tried to forget. It was called the Shelter of Lost Beasts. The place was cold, silent, and filled with creatures that no one wanted. Inside metal cages, strange beings waited for someone to adopt them. Some were small, some were dangerous, and some were broken. Among them was one creature that almost no one dared to look at. It was a dragon. Its wings were weak, its scales had lost their shine, and its fire had gone cold. The other beasts called it cursed. The workers at the shelter only shook their heads when they saw it. No one came for the dragon. No one believed it deserved another chance. The dragon lay in the shadows, eyes dull, its heart heavy with sorrow. Days turned into weeks, weeks into years. Still, it waited. It had once been proud, powerful, feared across the stars. But now, it was nothing more than a lonely prisoner, forgotten by the galaxy. It had stopped hoping, until one day, the door to the shelter opened, and a human walked in. The workers froze. Humans rarely visited this part of the galaxy, and even if they did, they never came to this shelter. The man who entered was tall, dressed in a dark flight suit, with a captain's badge on his chest. His eyes were sharp, searching, as if he was looking for something no one else could see. The workers whispered among themselves, "What is a human doing here? They have no need for beasts. He must be lost." But the man was not lost. His name was Captain Eric, and his steps were steady as he walked between the cages. The beasts leaned forward, each one hoping he would choose them. Some growled to show their strength. Some whined to show their need. But Eric did not stop for any of them. His gaze moved past snarling teeth, glowing eyes, and clawed hands. Then, he reached the last cage. Inside, hidden in the darkness, lay the dragon. Its head lifted slowly. Its eyes, once golden flames, were now dim embers. It expected the human to turn away like everyone else. But Eric did not move. He stood there, staring at the dragon as if he had been searching for it all along. The workers grew nervous. One of them hurried forward. "Sir, you do not want that one," he said quickly. "It is useless, broken, dangerous." Eric's voice was calm, but firm. "How long has it been here?" The worker shifted uneasily. "Too long. Longer than most survive. No one has ever chosen it. And for good reason. It is cursed." The dragon lowered its head, ashamed. It had heard these words countless times before. But then, the human did something no one expected. He stepped closer to the cage and whispered, almost gently, "I choose this one." The shelter fell silent. The workers stared at him as if he had gone mad. "Sir, you cannot mean that," the worker insisted. "This dragon destroyed its last master. It has no loyalty, no hope. If you take it, you will regret it. You may not even survive." Eric's eyes never left the dragon. He placed his hand on the cold bars of the cage. "I know what I am doing," he said. The worker shook his head. "No, human. You do not know. This dragon is not just sad. It is dangerous. If you walk away now, you save your life." The dragon's chest ached as it listened. It wanted to shout, to tell the human to leave before it was too late. But for the first time in years, a spark flickered in its heart. Someone had chosen it. Someone had looked past its broken wings and fading fire. Slowly, the dragon raised its head again and met Eric's eyes. For a brief moment, the shelter seemed to fade away. There was only the human and the dragon, staring at each other, bound by something neither could explain. Finally, Eric spoke. "Open the cage." The worker gasped. "Are you insane? You do not understand what you are taking with you." Eric turned his head slightly, his voice low but commanding. "I said, open the cage." With trembling hands, the worker unlocked the bars. The dragon stepped forward, its movements weak but steady. It could not believe this was real. It could not believe that after all these years, someone had given it freedom. The other beasts growled in jealousy. The workers whispered in fear. But Eric only nodded, as if this was the choice he had been meant to make all along. As the dragon crossed the threshold of its cage, it paused and spoke in a voice rough from silence. "Why would you save me?" it asked. Its words were broken, heavy, filled with sorrow. "I am dangerous." Eric looked at the dragon, his expression unreadable. "Because everyone deserves a second chance," he said. The shelter master stepped forward, his face pale. "You fool," he hissed. "Do you even know what this dragon really is?" The shelter grew quiet as Captain Eric stood beside the dragon. The master of the shelter, a tall alien with gray skin and glowing eyes, stepped forward. His voice was sharp and filled with anger. "Human, listen to me. You are making a mistake. That dragon is not what it seems. It carries a curse. The last one who took it never returned. Do you wish to follow the same fate?" Eric's gaze did not waver. "I have made my choice," he replied firmly. "Prepare the release papers." The master clenched his teeth. "You do not understand. This creature is dangerous. It destroyed its last owner. Do you think you are stronger than them? Do you think it will spare you?" The other workers nodded quickly, whispering their fears. The dragon lowered its head in shame. Its heart ached, because the words were true, at least partly. Painful memories clawed at its mind. A past filled with fire, screams, and betrayal. It wished it could tell the human to leave, but the words would not come. For the first time in so long, someone saw more than just a broken beast. Someone had chosen it. Eric signed the release papers with a steady hand. The workers muttered in disbelief. They handed him a small device, a collar key, and stepped back as if afraid to stand too close. The dragon felt the weight of the collar around its neck lighten when the lock clicked open. 4 years, that collar had been its prison, draining its strength, keeping it weak and helpless. Now, with a soft hiss, it fell to the ground. The dragon shivered. Freedom felt strange. Its wings trembled, though still weak. Its chest rose and fell with shaky breaths. It looked at Eric again, trying to understand why this human had taken such a risk. "Come," Eric said calmly. "You're with me now." The dragon followed, each step uncertain. The other beasts growled in envy. Some hissed warnings. One whispered through the bars, "The human is doomed." The workers kept their distance as Eric led the dragon out of the shelter. Outside, the sky was painted with distant stars, and Eric's ship stood waiting on the landing pad. A sleek vessel, small but strong, built for speed. The dragon stared at it in silence. It had not seen the stars in years. For a moment, it almost forgot its sadness. Almost. As they walked toward the ship, the dragon spoke softly. Its voice was rough and used, but still carried an ancient weight. "Why?" it asked. Eric glanced at it. "Why what? Why choose me?" The dragon's eyes lowered. "I am broken. Useless. Others warned you. I am dangerous." Eric paused before the ramp of his ship. His hand rested on the cold metal surface. He looked at the dragon and said, "Because everyone else only saw what you lost. I see what you still are." The dragon blinked, confused. No one had ever spoken to it like this. Not since long before the shelter. Not since the days when it flew free among the stars. Inside the ship, the corridors were narrow but clean. Eric guided the dragon to a small chamber. It was simple, with soft light and a resting space. "This will be your quarters," Eric said. "Rest here. You are safe." The dragon lay down, its massive body folding into the chamber. Safe. The word felt strange. It wanted to believe it. It wanted to trust. But deep inside, fear still lingered. Could it truly escape what it had been? Could a human really protect it from what was coming? Eric sat in the pilot's chair, preparing the ship for departure. The engines roared to life, and the vessel rose from the landing pad. The shelter grew smaller behind them, fading into the night sky. The dragon watched through the window as the stars grew brighter, its eyes filled with both wonder and worry. Hours passed in silence as they traveled through the dark void of space. Eric focused on the controls, while the dragon's mind wandered. Finally, it spoke again. "You do not understand," it whispered. "The master was right. I am dangerous. My past is full of blood and fire. I destroyed everything I loved. I will destroy you too." Eric did not turn his head. "If that was true, you would not warn me." The dragon's chest tightened. It had no answer. It lowered its head, curling into itself. Sleep came slowly, but when it did, it was filled with nightmares. Fire. Screams. Shadows that chased it through endless skies. When the dragon woke, the ship was quiet, but something felt wrong. Its sharp senses, dulled for so long, picked up something unusual. A faint signal. A distant echo in the void. It stretched its wings slightly, uneasy. Eric noticed the movement. "What is it?" he asked. The dragon hesitated. "We are not alone." Eric checked his scanners, but nothing appeared. Still, the dragon's instincts were not easily wrong. A feeling of dread crept into the cabin. The dragon's eyes burned faintly as it whispered, "They will come for me. They always come." Eric's hands tightened on the controls. His jaw set. "Let them come," he said. But in the dragon's heart, a storm was building. It knew that freedom came with a price, and soon, that price would be demanded. The ship drifted through the endless dark of space, stars flashing by like tiny sparks. Inside, silence pressed heavy on the walls. Captain Eric sat in the pilot's chair, eyes focused on the controls, while the dragon lay curled in its chamber, half awake, half lost in memories. Every sound of the ship made the dragon's heart jump. Freedom felt unreal, yet fear followed close behind. It remembered the shelter master's warning. It remembered the whispers of danger. But most of all, it remembered the war. Its wings twitched as broken images rose in its mind, vast skies burning red, enemy ships filling the horizon, and its own fire raining down. Once, it had been a creature of legend. Once, it had been feared across the stars. But all that was gone now, sealed away behind chains, cages, and years of silence. It did not want to remember, but the memories refused to sleep. Eric glanced back from his seat. He noticed the dragon's unease. "You are troubled," he said. The dragon shifted, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "You do not know what you carry, human. I am not only broken. I am hunted." Eric raised a brow. Hunted? By who? The dragon's throat tightened. It wanted to tell the truth, but fear strangled its voice. Still, it whispered, "The ones who destroyed my kin. The ones who burned our skies. They will never stop searching for me. They will follow me to the edge of the galaxy." Eric leaned back in his chair, studying the dragon. His expression was calm, but his voice was steady with steel. "Then let them come. If they hunt you, they will have to face me too." The dragon stared at him in silence, confused. Why would a human, a stranger, risk everything for it? No one had ever done such a thing. Not since its family. Not since the firestorm that ended everything. A heavy pause filled the room. Then, faintly, alarms flickered on the ship's dashboard. A strange pulse echoed through the sensors, sharp and quick, like a heartbeat in the void. Eric frowned. Strange. Something is out there. The dragon stiffened, its instincts screaming. "It is them," it whispered, eyes narrowing. "They have found me." Eric checked the scanner again. At first, nothing appeared. Then, slowly, a shadow emerged on the screen, large, cold, and moving fast. The ship trembled as space around them began to ripple. A pull, invisible but powerful, dragged them off course. Eric cursed under his breath, pulling at the controls. "They are locking us out of hyperspace." The stars outside stretched, then snapped back, leaving the ship stranded in dead silence. Before them, a massive warship materialized, its hull black and jagged, covered with glowing red symbols. It was not like any vessel Eric had seen before, but the dragon recognized it instantly. Its body shook, wings pressing tight against its sides. "It is them," the dragon growled. "The hunters of Ash." Eric narrowed his eyes, gripping the controls. The warship sent out a booming transmission. A voice filled the cabin, deep and commanding. "Human vessel, surrender the creature you carry. It does not belong to you. Hand it over, and you may leave alive." Eric shot a glance at the dragon. The dragon's head hung low, shame heavy in its voice. "They want me. If you give me to them, they will let you live." For a long moment, the cabin was quiet. The choice hung in the air like a blade. Then Eric's voice cut through the silence. "No." The dragon lifted its head in shock. "No." Eric's eyes burned with determination. "I didn't choose you just to give you away. If they want you, they'll have to go through me." The warship's voice thundered again, colder this time. "Foolish human. You cannot protect it. You cannot even protect yourself. You have one chance: surrender, or be destroyed." Eric pressed a switch, powering the ship's weapons. "I don't surrender," he said. The dragon's chest tightened. It had expected betrayal. It had expected to be handed over, just like before. But this human stood his ground, even against a force far stronger than him. For the first time in years, the dragon felt something stir inside, a small spark of hope. The enemy warship moved closer, red lights glowing like eyes in the dark. Smaller attack craft began to launch, circling the human's vessel like wolves around prey. Eric tightened his grip on the controls. The ship shook as the first blasts of enemy fire lit up the void. The dragon growled, its body trembling with both fear and rage. Its wings flexed, its throat burned, and for a heartbeat, the fire inside it flickered alive. Eric glanced back, his eyes meeting the dragon's. "If you have any strength left," he said, "I could use it now." The dragon bared its teeth, a low rumble escaping its chest. "I told you, I am broken. My fire is gone." But even as it spoke, a faint glow flickered in its throat, weak but real. Enemy fire slammed against the ship's shields. Sparks flew, alarms screamed. Eric fought to keep control, weaving through the dark. The dragon's heart pounded. Fear battled with something deeper: anger, pride, and the memory of what it once had been. At last, it roared, and a thin stream of flame burst from its mouth, striking one of the enemy ships. The blast tore through its hull, sending it spinning into darkness. The dragon gasped, smoke curling from its jaws. The fire was weak, but it was there. Eric smiled grimly. "That's a start," he said. The enemy warship loomed larger, its weapons charging for a killing strike. The dragon's eyes glowed brighter than before, and deep inside, it knew this was only the beginning. The enemy warship towered in the void like a dark mountain of steel, its crimson lights glowing like the eyes of a predator. Around it, smaller hunter craft circled, fast and sharp, cutting across the black sky. Inside the human vessel, alarms blared and sparks rained from the ceiling as Eric fought to hold the controls steady. His ship was quick, but against an Empire warship, quickness was not enough. The dragon pressed its claws against the floor, wings trembling with both fear and anger. The fire inside its chest flickered again, faint but alive, as if the human's refusal to surrender had lit something deep in its broken heart. The enemy's voice returned, booming across the cabin like thunder. "Human, this is your last warning. Surrender the dragon, or face destruction." Eric's jaw tightened. He looked at the dragon, then back at the stars. "I already gave you my answer," he muttered, flipping the weapon controls. The ship's cannons roared, spitting bolts of light into the dark, striking one of the hunter craft and blowing it apart in a sudden blaze. The rest of the hunters swarmed closer, firing streams of energy that hammered against the ship's shields. The cabin shook violently, throwing Eric against his seat. The dragon growled, forcing itself to rise despite the weakness in its limbs. It pressed close to the cockpit window, eyes glowing brighter. Memories surged through its mind, memories of battles fought long ago. Once, it had flown free across the stars, burning entire fleets to ash. Once, its roar had made empires tremble. But that power had been stolen, chained, drained until only a shadow remained. Yet now, as the human fought without fear, the dragon felt that shadow stirring. One of the hunters broke past the shields and slammed a blast against the hull. The ship lurched, alarms screaming, metal groaning under the pressure. Eric cursed, hands dancing over the controls. "We can't keep this up much longer." The dragon's throat burned, and for a heartbeat, a spark of flame leaked past its teeth. Eric noticed. "If you have more of that in you," he said sharply, "now's the time to use it." The dragon's claws scraped against the floor. "I told you. I am broken. My fire is gone." Eric snapped his gaze at it, eyes fierce. "I don't believe that. I saw what you did back there. You're not broken, you're holding back." The words struck the dragon harder than enemy fire. Holding back. Could it be true? Or had the years of chains truly destroyed it? Another blast shook the ship, forcing the dragon's decision. With a roar, it opened its jaws and forced the spark out. A weak but blazing stream of fire erupted, lashing against a hunter craft. The vessel burned, spiraled, and shattered into pieces. The dragon's chest heaved with the effort, smoke curling from its mouth, but its eyes glowed brighter. Eric grinned through the chaos. "That's it. Keep going." More hunters closed in, their weapons lighting the void. Eric spun the ship through the firestorm, weaving between beams of energy. The dragon forced itself forward, pressing against the window as another roar tore from its throat. Flames burst out again, stronger this time, sweeping across two hunters and tearing them apart in fiery explosions. The enemy warship rumbled, its voice colder than ever. "Impressive. But useless. You cannot win." A massive cannon on the warship began to glow, energy building like a rising sun. The dragon's heart pounded. It recognized that weapon. It had seen it destroy entire flocks of its kin in a single strike. Terror clawed at its mind. Its wings folded tight, its breath caught. But then, it felt something, a hand. Eric's hand, resting steady against its scaled shoulder. "Stay with me," he said calmly. "You are not alone this time." The dragon froze, stunned. Not alone. Those words echoed deep inside, louder than the enemy's threats, louder than the memory of fire and screams. Not alone. The glow in its throat surged, brighter than before. Its wings spread wide, filling the cabin with shadow. For the first time in years, its roar shook with real power. Fire blasted from its jaws, a storm of flame that swept across the hunters closing in. 1, 2, 3 ships fell, their wreckage lighting the void. The warship shuddered as smaller blasts struck its hull. For the first time, the enemy hesitated. But the massive cannon kept building power, its glow so bright it painted the dragon's scales in red light. The dragon trembled, knowing what was coming. It whispered in fear. "That weapon will destroy us." Eric's voice was steady, unshaken. "Then we don't give it the chance." He slammed the controls, forcing the ship into a desperate dive toward the warship. Enemy fire blazed around them, tearing across the void, but Eric's hands were steady. The dragon braced itself, fire burning brighter, wings stretching wide. In that moment, broken or not, it knew it had a choice. It could hide in fear, or it could rise again. The cannon on the warship reached its peak, light roaring brighter than a star. The dragon opened its jaws and roared with all its strength, unleashing a wave of fire that lit up the darkness. The flames struck the cannon just as it fired, creating an explosion so bright it blinded the stars themselves. The shockwave ripped across space, hurling the human ship into the void. Inside the cabin, alarms screamed and the lights flickered. The dragon collapsed, chest heaving, wings scorched by its own fire. Eric fought to stabilize the ship, his eyes locked on the burning wreckage of the enemy weapon. For a moment, silence fell. They had survived. But the dragon's voice was low, almost broken. This was only one ship. The Empire has many. They will never stop. Eric met its gaze, calm and steady. Then we'll never stop either. The dragon stared at him, fire still glowing faintly in its chest. For the first time since its fall, it believed the fight was not yet over. The ship drifted in silence after the battle, its hull scorched and its systems damaged, but still alive. Eric sat in the pilot's chair, hands steady on the controls as he guided the vessel away from the wreckage. The dragon lay in the chamber behind him, its chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. Smoke still curled from its jaws, the fire inside both painful and awakening. For a long time, neither spoke. Only the sound of the ship's engines and the faint crackle of broken circuits filled the air. At last, Eric broke the silence. "That was not the fire of a broken creature," he said firmly. "That was power. Real power. And I think it's time you told me the truth." The dragon turned its head slowly, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. It wanted to hide, to bury its past forever, but the human's voice cut through its silence like a blade. "You risked everything for me," it whispered. "Why? Why fight for a beast you barely know?" Eric leaned back in his chair, his gaze fixed. "Because I don't believe you are what they say you are. I saw the fear in your eyes, but I also saw something else. Strength. Purpose. You're not just some sad creature in a cage. You're something much more. So tell me, what are you?" The dragon closed its eyes. Memories returned, sharp and heavy, as if time itself was forcing them forward. At last, in a voice rough but strong, it spoke. "I was not just a dragon. I was born of the royal line, the last heir of the ashen flame. My kin ruled the skies of 1,000 worlds. Our wings blocked out suns, our fire burned armies to dust. We were protectors, rulers, legends. But we were hunted. The Empire feared us, feared what we could become, so they built weapons to destroy us. They slaughtered my family. They burned our nests. They chained me, drained me, and left me to rot in that shelter." Its voice cracked with the weight of its confession. "I am the last of my kind. The last true dragon." Eric sat in silence, his jaw set, his mind piecing together the truth. He had heard whispers of the ashen flame, old stories told in shadowy corners of the galaxy. Most dismissed them as myth, tales of beasts too powerful to be real. But now, sitting in his ship, staring at the broken creature before him, he knew the myths were true. The dragon's eyes burned brighter as it continued. "The Empire hunts me because I carry what they fear most. If I regain my strength, if my fire returns in full, I can bring them down. I can finish what they started. But alone, I am nothing. Alone, I am broken." Its wings folded close, shame covering its face. "That is why I wanted you to leave me. To abandon me. Because anyone who stands with me will die." Eric rose from his seat, his boots echoing against the metal floor as he walked to the dragon. He placed a hand against its scaled shoulder, his voice low but unshaken. "You think being hunted makes you weak? It doesn't. It makes you dangerous to them. And if they fear you, then that means you are worth fighting for. You say you are the last of your kind. Then let the last one rise again." The dragon's chest trembled. For years, it had been told it was cursed, broken, useless. Now this human, this stranger, spoke as if it still mattered, as if its fire could still change the galaxy. The spark in its chest glowed brighter, small but steady. "You would stand against the Empire with me?" it asked softly. Eric's eyes were sharp as steel. "I would stand against anyone who believes they can chain the innocent. I don't care if it's an empire or a god. You are not alone anymore." The dragon stared at him, words lost in its throat. In its heart, something shifted. The chains of doubt began to crack. For the first time since its fall, it allowed itself to believe in hope. Outside the ship, the stars stretched endless and cold, but in the cabin, fire stirred. The dragon straightened slowly, its wings unfolding wider, its eyes glowing with a faint but fierce light. If I regain my strength, it said, voice growing harder, I will not just burn their fleets. I will burn their throne. I will tear their empire apart, piece by piece, until nothing remains but ash. Eric gave a small nod, the corner of his mouth curving into a grim smile. Good. Then we fight together. But even as the vow settled between them, the ship's sensors beeped faintly, warning of signals in the distance. The dragon turned its head sharply, instincts flaring. They are already hunting us again, it growled. Eric returned to the pilot's seat, his hands steady. Then let them find us. We'll be ready. The dragon's fire glowed brighter, reflecting in its eyes like twin suns. It was no longer just the saddest creature in a cage. It was the last heir of fire, and with a human at its side, it would rise again. Days passed as the ship moved through the silent reaches of space, always running, always hiding, but never stopping. The dragon rested in its chamber, wings slowly gaining strength, fire stirring deeper in its chest each time it dared to breathe harder. Eric worked tirelessly at the controls, repairing systems, plotting courses, keeping them alive against the Empire's endless shadow. But something was changing. Where once there had been silence between them, now there was talk, small at first, then stronger. Eric asked questions, and the dragon, though hesitant, began to answer. It told him of the skies where its kin once flew, of the nests carved in mountains of crystal, of the songs they sang to the stars. Its voice grew steadier with each memory, though sorrow clung to every word. Eric listened, not with pity, but with respect, as if each story was a treasure. The dragon found itself watching him more closely, studying this human who had risked everything. Eric was not large, not armored, not a warrior of legend, yet his will burned stronger than steel. He did not fear the dragon's past, nor did he flinch at its fire. Slowly, the dragon felt the bond between them deepen, something it had never known with any other being. It was not just loyalty. It was trust. Yet outside, danger never slept. The Empire's fleets grew closer with every day, their signals flickering on distant scanners. Sometimes the dragon woke in the night, hearing faint echoes, like whispers of hunters in the void. Each time, Eric would already be at the controls, watching, waiting, never afraid. The dragon asked him once, "Why do you not fear death? Why do you fight for me, when even my own kind would say I am lost?" Eric looked at it, his eyes steady. "Because I believe in choices. They tried to chain yours, but you still chose to fight beside me. That means more than what you were. It means what you still can be." The dragon lowered its head, its chest glowing with a faint ember. Those words struck deeper than any weapon. As the days stretched, Eric began training the dragon again, though not in grand battles but in small steps. At first, he asked it to breathe flame into empty space, weak sparks sputtering from its throat. Then, slowly, the sparks grew into streams, short bursts of fire that lit the dark around them. The dragon groaned with exhaustion each time, but Eric encouraged it, never letting it give in. "You're stronger than you think," he would say, his voice sharp with certainty. The dragon wanted to believe him, and little by little, it did. Its wings began to stretch wider, its body no longer trembling with each step. Fire no longer felt like a forgotten memory, but a living force waiting to rise again. Still, fear haunted it. One night, when the stars were quiet, it confessed in a low voice, "I am afraid. What if my strength never returns? What if I fail you when it matters most?" Eric stood before it, his shadow small against the dragon's vast form, but his voice carried more weight than 1,000 armies. "Then we fail together. But I don't think you will. I think the Empire fears you for a reason. They know what you are capable of, even if you have forgotten." The dragon felt its chest ache, not with sorrow but with a fierce warmth. This human was not just an ally. He was a bond it had never thought possible. Trust. Friendship. Maybe even something deeper, something it could not yet name. The days of hiding ended when the Empire finally caught up. Their scanners screamed with warnings as multiple warships appeared from hyperspace, cutting off every path. The void lit up with red light as the enemy closed in. The dragon's eyes widened, fear clawing at its throat, but Eric's hands were calm on the controls. "We knew this would happen," he said. "But this time, we fight on our terms." The dragon stepped into the cockpit, its wings brushing the walls, its fire glowing brighter than it had since the old days. "I will fight," it said, voice trembling but strong. "Not because I must, but because I choose to. With you." Eric gave a fierce smile. "That's all I needed to hear." The Empire fleet spread before them, engines glowing, weapons charging. The dragon's fire surged, licking the air, filling the cabin with heat. The bond between human and dragon pulsed like a living flame, stronger than fear, stronger than doubt. Together they faced the dark, ready to stand against an empire. And as the first enemy cannons roared, the dragon's fire erupted with a force that shook the stars, a fire not of weakness but of rebirth. The Empire fleet closed in like a wall of steel and fire, their warships stretching across the horizon of stars, engines glowing red as their weapons charged. Eric's small ship stood alone against them, a speck of light in the endless dark, but inside, there was no fear. The dragon stood tall within the cabin, wings brushing the walls, its eyes blazing with fire that had not burned this bright in years. The bond between human and dragon pulsed like a living force, each heartbeat filled with determination. Alarms screamed as the enemy hailed them with one final demand. "Human vessel, surrender the last dragon or be destroyed. This is your end." Eric looked at the glowing red eyes on the screen and answered with steady calm. "No. This is your end." He slammed the controls, launching the ship forward at impossible speed. Enemy fire lit up the void, beams slicing past, explosions shaking the hull. The dragon roared, its voice echoing through the ship and into the stars. Fire erupted from its jaws, a river of flame so fierce it cut through the darkness and struck the lead hunter craft, tearing it apart in an instant. More hunters swarmed, but Eric's hands were steady, weaving the ship through the chaos, every move matched by the dragon's fire. One by one, enemy ships fell, burning wreckage drifting into the void. But the Empire's flagship loomed larger ahead, its cannon glowing like a rising sun, ready to unleash death upon them. The dragon's fire blazed, but doubt crept into its mind. That weapon had destroyed its kin before, had burned skies and ended legacies. Could it truly stop it now? Eric glanced at the dragon, his eyes fierce. "Listen to me. You are not broken anymore. You are not cursed. You are the last flame, and together, we end this." The dragon felt the truth in his words, felt the bond stronger than chains, stronger than fear. With a roar that shook the void, it spread its wings wide, filling the cabin with light. Fire surged from its throat, brighter than ever before, flames that carried the memory of its lost kin, the strength of its bloodline, and the hope of what it could become again. The stream of fire struck the enemy fleet, ripping through their shields, igniting ships in bursts of light. Eric pushed the engines to their limit, racing straight toward the flagship as its cannon reached full charge. The enemy commander's voice thundered. "You cannot stop us. You cannot stop the Empire." But his words were drowned by the dragon's roar, a sound that echoed like thunder across the stars. The flagship's cannon unleashed its beam, a blazing column of destruction aimed to erase them. In the same instant, the dragon released all of its fire, a storm of flame that met the cannon head-on. The collision lit the galaxy with blinding light, fire against fire, will against power. The ship shook violently, alarms shrieking, metal screaming under the force. Eric held the controls firm, his eyes locked on the path ahead. "Hold, just hold," he shouted. The dragon pushed harder, every scale burning, every breath tearing at its chest, but it did not stop. It thought of the years in the cage, the shame, the sorrow, the whispers of being cursed. It thought of Eric, who had seen more than weakness, who had given it a choice. With a final roar, the dragon unleashed its full strength, wings blazing, body glowing with the true fire of its kind. The storm of flame shattered the enemy's cannon, the explosion ripping through the flagship in a burst of red and gold. Shockwaves hurled debris across the void, tearing through the remaining hunters and scattering them like leaves in a storm. The flagship split apart, flames consuming its massive hull, until only wreckage drifted in silence. The battlefield went quiet. The Empire fleet was broken. The dragon collapsed to the floor of the cabin, smoke curling from its body, wings scorched but glowing with the fire of rebirth. Eric rushed to its side, placing a hand against its scales. "You did it," he said softly. The dragon lifted its head weakly, eyes still burning like twin suns. "We did it," it whispered. Silence filled the void as the last wreckage burned out, but in that silence, something new was born, a legend. Word would spread, across stations, across worlds, across the very heart of the Empire. The story of a human and a dragon who defied an empire, who stood together when no one else dared, who burned brighter than fear itself. The dragon closed its eyes, resting, but deep inside, it knew this was not the end. Empires do not die in a single battle. They would come again, stronger, hungrier. But now it was no longer alone. It had a partner, a friend, a bond stronger than chains. And in the shadows of the galaxy, whispers already began to grow. Whispers of the last dragon and the human who chose it. Whispers of fire and defiance. Whispers of a legend that would not fade. Eric sat in the pilot's chair, eyes fixed on the stars ahead. His voice was calm, steady, filled with promise. "Let them come. We'll be ready." The dragon's fire stirred once more, glowing faintly, a flame that would never be caged again.